We'll start by importing listview and keyboard from React Native. Now in our constructor, we'll create a data source for our listview. The listview data source takes an object with a row has changed function, which will then help the listview render efficiently. Now we'll add our data source to state by saying ds.clone with rows and passing in an empty array. Now we'll go and we'll create a new row file. This will be the row that gets passed into the listview's render row function, and we'll create a React Native component and we'll call it row. Now we'll go back to our app and we'll import row from ./row. Now we'll scroll down to our content, and inside here we'll say listview, which will be a self-closing tag. We'll then give it an enable empty sections. We'll give it our data source of data source equals this.state.dataSource. And also, because we don't hide the keyboard on the submission of our input, we'll need to do onScroll equals a function with keyboard dot dismiss. So whenever anybody scrolls the list view, we will hide our keyboard. Now we'll create our render row, which is a function that gets passed the value of what we set in our data source. And so we'll say key value. So we will pull off the key and then spread the rest into our value. And then we'll return a row and give it key equals key. And we'll spread our value into our row so we can access all of the properties. We'll also add a render separator prop, which is a function that passes in section ID and row ID. This will render in between each of our rows. We'll then return a view and give it a key of row ID, as well as a style equals styles.separator, which we haven't created yet. We'll also add in a style to our list view by doing style equals styles.list. Now we'll go down to our styles and we'll create our list style, which will just give it a background color of white. And then for our separator, we'll give it a border width of 1 and a border color of F5. Now when we refresh, you can see that everything still renders, but we do have a white background of the list view rendering. Now we need to wire up the handling of adding items to our list, so we'll scroll up and we'll create a helper function called setSource, which will be a function that takes items of our data source, and other state. We'll then also bind this to this. And inside here, we'll say this.setState, we'll say items, say data source is equal to our current this.state.dataSource .clone with rows items data source. And this will allow us to keep track of different items than are rendered on the screen. We'll also spread in any other state that anybody gives us, and we will also default that to an object. Now that we have this helper function, we can go wire it up to where our other functions are. So we'll say this.setSource is equal to new items, and then all complete, which will pass in our complete. So we will remove this. And then also in our handle add items, we'll switch this over from this.setState to setSource. Pass in new items, and then our value of nothing. Now that new items are being added to our data source, we can go into our row. We'll open this up. We'll render our text. And inside here, we'll say this.props.text, which comes down from the spread operator in the render row. Now when we go refresh and we type something and press enter, we can now see it rendering on the screen. Now we'll add some styles to our row. So we'll create a const styles equals style sheet.create, which is a function that takes our object. We'll then give a container for our wrapper And then a text for our text. For our text, we'll give it a font size of 24 and a color of 4D, 4D, 4D. Now we'll add some styling to our container. We'll give padding of 10 on each side, the flex direction of row, and align items will be flex start with justify content space between. Flex start with align items will render things toward the top, and then our justify content will render things across the way with space in between them. So now we will apply our style equals styles.container. We'll then apply style equals styles.text. And now we're going to refresh. This is a to-do. You can see that the text is large with padding in between.